In the gritty outskirts of Newark, New Jersey, where the hum of interstate traffic never quite fades into silence, a routine highway maintenance crew was knee-deep in the unglamorous grind of upgrading the drainage systems along Interstate 80, that endless ribbon of asphalt snaking through the industrial sprawl like a vein pulsing with the lifeblood of America's restless commute. It was one of those overcast mornings in early spring, the kind where the air hangs heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and diesel fumes, and the workers, hard-hatted guys named Tony and Marco, and a few others who'd been at this game for decades, were tearing into an ancient concrete storm drain manhole that had squatted curbside for what felt like forever. Its weathered lid camouflaged by decades of grime and the occasional spray of wild mustard weeds pushing through the cracks. The excavator's bucket clanged against the reinforced edges, scooping out chunks of crumbling cement and silt-choked gravel, when suddenly it snagged on something that didn't give like the usual debris, no loose rebar or forgotten pipe, but a dense, unyielding mass that tugged back with a stubborn weight, like the earth itself was reluctant to let go. Tony killed the engine, hopped down from the cab with a curse under his breath, and they all gathered around as the bucket swung free, dangling this wrapped bundle from its teeth. A bulky, irregularly shaped package no bigger than a duffel bag, but heavier, cocooned in layer upon layer of industrial silver duct tape that gleamed dully under the diffused sunlight. The kind of tape you buy in bulk at Home Depot for sealing leaks or patching trailers, but here it was wound so meticulously overlapping in tight paranoid spirals that spoke of hands that knew exactly what they were hiding, or at least trying to. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Construction sites turned up all sorts of forgotten junk, from old tires to rusted tools. But this felt off, too deliberate, too sealed against the elements, and Marco radioed it in without hesitation, his voice cracking just a bit over the walkie-talkie as he described it to dispatch. "Yeah, we got something weird down here buried shallow, like it was meant to stay put, but not too deep, wrapped up tighter than a suspect in cuffs." By noon, the site was a hive of flashing blue lights and yellow tape, Newark PD rolling up in unmarked sedans, and a forensics van that looked like it had seen better days. The lead detective, a no-nonsense woman named Rita Vasquez, with 20 years on the force and a tattoo of the Jersey State outline peeking from her sleeve, squatting down to inspect the find before they even cracked it open. Her gloved hands traced the tape's edges, noting the faint discoloration where moisture had seeped in over time, the way the bundle had settled into the clay soil like it belonged there, undisturbed until the city's endless infrastructure shuffle decided otherwise. When they finally sliced through with a utility knife, the layers peeling back like the skin of some grotesque onion, the air thickened with a stale, earthy rot that no one wanted to name aloud. And there it was, cradled in a fold of what might have once been a clean bedsheet, now mottled with mold, a human head desiccated but intact enough to turn the stomachs of even the most jaded officers. The features blurred by time and decay, but the dark hair matted in familiar waves, the jaw slack in eternal surprise. Rita stood up slowly, pulling off her gloves with a snap that echoed in the sudden quiet, and muttered to her partner, "This ain't no accident. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure this stayed buried, and now it's come back to bite us all in the ass." Word spread like wildfire through the department channels, but it took the lab techs back at the Essex County Forensics Bunker, those wizards with their microscopes and mass spectrometers, to piece together the identity cross-referencing dental records from the National Missing Persons Database with a precision that felt almost merciful in its efficiency. The fillings, the bridge work on the lower molars, the slight asymmetry in the bite from a childhood brace's mishap, it all matched the file of Emily Carter, a 27-year-old who'd vanished from her quiet life in suburban Montclair 6 years earlier. Her case, yellowed and forgotten in the stacks like so many others, In a country where people slip away into the ether every day, chasing dreams or dodging debts, or just hitting the reset button on a life that got too heavy. Emily had been the picture of that all-American dream deferred, the kind of girl who grew up in a split-level ranch house with a manicured lawn and a swing set in the backyard, the daughter of a high school guidance counselor dad and a part-time librarian mom who baked apple pies for PTA meetings and volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends. At 27, she was settled into a steady gig as an administrative assistant at a bustling dental practice in downtown Newark, the kind of place where blue-collar folks from the ironbound district came for root canals and whitening strips. Her days filled with scheduling appointments, filing insurance claims, and flashing that warm, disarming smile that made harried patients forget their pain for a moment. She wasn't flashy jeans and blouses from Target, a sensible Honda Civic with a dent from that fender bender last winter, but she had that effortless glow, the straight-A college grad who'd majored in communications at Rutgers before settling back into the orbit of home, dreaming of a life that balanced career and family without tipping too far either way. And then there was Michael Reynolds, her fiancé 33, and climbing the owner of Reynolds Imports, a niche outfit tucked into a warehouse off Route 1 and 9 that specialized in high-end European furniture, those sleek Danish teak sideboards and Italian leather sectionals that screamed understated luxury to the upwardly mobile crowd in Montclair and Maplewood. Michael was the guy everyone envied without quite admitting it, tall and broad-shouldered from his pickup basketball games at the YMCA with a jawline that could have been chiseled from the same granite as the Palisades cliffs across the river, and a business sense honed from night classes at Seton Hall, while he bootstrapped his way from a garage startup to a six-figure operation with 2 showroom pop-ups in Short Hills and Morristown. To the outside world, they were the quintessential suburban power couple, the ones whose engagement announcement in the Newark Star-Ledger Society page drew coos from aunts and uncles at backyard barbecues. Emily, the girl next door, sweetheart, with her cascade of chestnut curls and laugh like wind chimes. Michael, the self-made entrepreneur, who'd surprise her with weekend getaways to the Poconos or reservations at that farm to Table Spot in Asbury Park. Their wedding was set to be the event of the season at the historic Evergreen House in West Orange, a sprawling Victorian manse with manicured gardens and a ballroom that evoked old money elegance without the stuffiness, complete with a playlist of Springsteen covers from a local cover band and a cake from that artisanal bakery in Bloomfield that used heirloom apples from Terhune orchards. Invitations had gone out on Crane and Company stationery RSVPs, trickling in with heartfelt notes about how they'd make such a great team, how Emily's kindness balanced Michael's drive, how they embodied that Jersey grit wrapped in a bow of possibility. But 2 days before the big day, as the final fittings for her off-the-shoulder lace gown hung in the bridal shop, and the florist confirmed the peony centerpieces, Emily Carter simply vanished. It started with a no-show at the dental office, her desk drawer still stocked with those little stress balls she handed out to nervous kids. Her computer logged off mid-morning without a goodbye email to the team. Her phone went straight to voicemail after the first few rings, the cheerful greeting she'd recorded back in college looping into an accusation, "Hey, this is Emily. Leave a message and I'll call you back with coffee in hand." Her Montclair apartment, a cozy one-bedroom walk-up above a deli that sold the best prosciutto paninis in town, yielded no chaos, no overturned lamp, no shattered glass, no lipstick-smeared plea scrawled on the bathroom mirror like in some Lifetime movie. The bed was neatly made with that duvet cover from West Elm she'd picked out during a girls' trip to the outlet malls in Secaucus, her closet half-packed with outfits for the honeymoon in Napa Valley, her purse and wallet gone, but everything else in its place. The framed photo of her and Michael at the county fair, arms around each other with cotton candy mustaches. The stack of bridal magazines dog-eared at the pages on vow ideas. Even her running shoes by the door laces tied just so. Panic rippled out from there, her mom Linda calling the office first. Then the hospitals, her voice pitching higher with each unanswered ring. Her dad, Tom, driving the familiar route from their house in Glen Ridge to her place, peering into alleyways as if she might have stepped out for a forgotten carton of half and half. Michael was the one who filed the report down at the Montclair PD station that evening. His button-down rumpled from a day of frantic calls to mutual friends, his eyes red-rimmed, but his story steady. They'd had a spat the night before. Nothing major, just the usual pre-wedding jitters amplified by the champagne brunch with his out-of-town relatives where Emily had seemed distant, picking at her eggs Benedict and staring out at the Passaic River like it held some unspoken secret. According to him, she'd confessed over their takeout tie from that spot on Bloomfield Avenue that she was having second thoughts. Not about him, he insisted, but about the whole package, the idea of trading her independence for the picket fence routine, quitting her job, to focus on starting a family like his traditional-minded folks from back in Ohio, had always nudged. She said she needed space to think. Michael told the desk sergeant, his voice cracking just enough to sell the heartbreak without overplaying it. And I told her we'd figure it out, but she grabbed her keys and said she'd drive around, clear her head. That was the last I heard. Her texts stopped cold. And now, God, what if she's out there somewhere regretting it all? The cops nodded sympathetically, pulling up her driver's license photo on their ancient desktop. Emily beaming in that DMV shot, minimal makeup and a hint of mischief in her hazel eyes, and logging the details into the system, white female 5'6", 125 pounds, last seen in yoga pants and a hoodie from the Rutgers alumni store. In those early hours, as the initial wave of fear crested, the most palatable theory bubbled up among the inner circle. The one that stung least in a culture where ghosting your way out of commitments had become as American as apple pie apologies, cold feet. Emily had always been the planner, the one who color-coded her planner and agonized over RSVPs, but beneath that poise lurked a streak of wanderlust stories from her study abroad semester in London, where she'd backpacked solo through the Cotswolds, or that time she up and road tripped to Austin for SXSW on a whim, leaving her college roommates in the dust. Maybe the weight of it all, the vows, the mortgage on that fixer-upper in Verona, they'd eyed the expectation to morph from free-spirited Emily into Mrs. Reynolds overnight had hit like a freight train, sending her fleeing toward some anonymous motel off the turnpike or a friend's couch in Philly, plotting her escape from the altar without burning every bridge. Her parents clung to that narrative like a life raft, Tom poring over her old journals for clues, while Linda baked casseroles. No one ate whispering to neighbors over the backyard fence that their girl was just taking a beat like we all do when life's moving too fast. The Montclair PD stretched thin with carjackings in the city, and domestic calls in the hills ran the basics. Pings on her cell last traced to a tower near the industrial parks by the airport, canvassing her usual haunts from the yoga studio on Park Street to the indie bookstore in Bloomfield, where she hosted book club nights, even alerting Amtrak in case she'd bolted for the city. But no hits, no ATM cams catching her familiar stride, no frantic posts on her Facebook wall from a burner account. After a week of dead ends, the lead investigator, a grizzled vet named Harlan with a mustache that screamed 1980s cop shows, closed the file as a voluntary missing person, the kind that clogged databases across the country from runaways in the Rust Belt to executives vanishing into Mexico with offshore accounts. Folks like her, they resurface when they're ready. He told the Carters over lukewarm coffee in their kitchen, his tone laced with that pragmatic Jersey bluntness that bordered on dismissal. Or they don't, and we keep the light on just in case. Emily's story faded into the suburban ether whispered about at block parties and PTA meetings as that tragic tale of the runaway bride. The girl who'd ditched her dream guy at the 11th hour, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and half-eaten wedding favors. Michael played his part to perfection in those first chaotic weeks, plastering flyers on every lamppost from Newark to Nutley, her face smiling under the bold missing header reward line in scarlet ink, coordinating searches with volunteers from his Rotary Club, even sitting for a tearful interview on the local Fox affiliate, where he choked up recounting their last kiss on the doorstep, the way she'd promised to be back by dawn. But as the headlines dried up and the search parties dwindled to awkward coffee meetups, he retreated into the rhythm of Reynolds Imports. Channeling grief into growth. A new distribution deal with a Swedish design firm, pop-up events at the Prudential Center, tailgates, late nights in the warehouse, stacking crates of mid-century modern credenzas that sold out before the ink dried on the invoices. To his credit, or perhaps his camouflage, he never badmouthed her publicly, always framing it as her journey, whatever that means, earning nods of respect from the guys at the driving range who slapped his back and said things like, "You're a better man than most, Mike." Plenty of fish in the Hudson. 3 years on, he was dating again a poised real estate agent named Sarah from Summit, with a laugh like tinkling glass, and no baggage heavier than a divorce from a Wall Street type, their photos popping up on LinkedIn at charity galas for the Boys and Girls Club, him in a crisp navy suit that hugged his frame just right. The Carters, meanwhile, withered under the subtle siege of small-town scrutiny, that uniquely American blend of pity and prurience, where every grocery run brought sidelong stares at the ShopRite checkout. Heard about your Emily. Such a shame running off like that. And holiday cards that arrived with a hollow cheer, the envelopes unsealed by well-meaning relatives who'd clipped articles on missing white women from People magazine. Linda stopped hosting Easter brunches. Tom traded his golf league for solitary walks along the reservoir, their once vibrant home, now a shrine of stasis. Emily's room untouched posters of Florence, curling at the edges, her high school yearbook open to the page where she'd been voted most likely to travel the world. They told themselves she was out there thriving in some reinvented life, maybe waitressing in Portland or teaching yoga in Sedona, sipping IPAs with new friends who didn't know her scars, but deep down, the not knowing gnawed like a persistent ache, a void that no amount of therapy sessions at the community center could fill. And all the while that storm drain on I-80 did its job in stoic silence, swallowing runoff from Jersey's relentless rains, its concrete belly a forgotten artery in the sprawl, until the crew's backhoe unearthed what had been so carefully entombed, yanking the past into the glaring light of now and shattering the fragile peace Emily's loved ones had stitched together from threads of hope and denial. For Rita Vasquez and her team, as they bagged the remains and snapped photos under the sodium lamps that flickered to life against the encroaching dusk, this wasn't just another body dump in a state lousy with them. It was a ghost story clawing its way back to life, demanding reckoning for the lies that had buried it deeper than any tape or concrete could hope to contain. While the forensics team at the Essex County lab worked their grim alchemy swabbing desiccated tissue for DNA strands that time hadn't fully unraveled, cross-checking those pearly molars against faded x-rays from Emily's last checkup at the dental office, where she'd once joked about her $1,000,000 smile being her best asset. The world outside kept spinning in that indifferent Jersey rhythm, oblivious to the seismic shift brewing in a windowless room filled with the hum of centrifuges and the faint tang of formaldehyde. It took 48 hours for the call to come through to Detective Rita Vasquez's desk phone, a terse update from Dr. Elena Torres, the chief odontologist, her voice clipped like she was delivering stock quotes instead of a bombshell. It's her. Rita Emily Carter, no question. The premolar crown from that car accident when she was 22, exact match down to the porcelain shade. DNA's pending, but this is solid. Rita hung up staring at the corkboard in her office, where faded Polaroids of cold cases yellowed like old newspaper clippings, and felt that familiar churn in her gut, the one that came from knowing she'd just cracked open a coffin lid on a life everyone had written off as a footnote. By midday, the brass at Newark PD had looped in the state police for jurisdictional overlap. After all the dump sites straddled county lines, like so many of Jersey's messes, and an emergency presser was slapped together in the lobby of the Hall of Records, Rita front and center under the harsh fluorescence, her navy blazer buttoned tight against the chill of the AC, as she faced a scrum of local reporters from NJ.com and the Star-Ledger, their notepads flipping like frantic bird wings. What we thought was a runaway case from 6 years back, she said, her words measured for the cameras that faint. Queen's lilt slipping through despite years of cop-speak training is now an active homicide investigation. Emily Carter didn't ghost her life, she was taken from it. We're treating this as murder, with abandonment and desecration charges on the table, and we're asking anyone with tips to come forward. No stone unturned, folks. The room erupted in flashes and follow-ups. Any suspects? Was it the fiancé? But Rita stonewalled with the classics. Ongoing, can't comment, her mind already racing ahead to the war room they'd set up in a spare conference space. Whiteboards soon to be scrawled with timelines and suspect webs, the kind of setup that turned desk jockeys into hounds on a scent. Back in Montclair, the news hit like a nor'easter off the Atlantic sirens wailing in the distance as squad cars rolled up to the Carter house on that tree-lined street, where maple leaves were just starting to blush gold, the same unassuming colonial where Tom and Linda had raised 3 kids on Meatloaf Mondays and summer bonfires in the backyard fire pit. Linda answered the door in her robe, flour dusted from a half-hearted attempt at scones, her go-to stress, her face crumpling like wet Kleenex, when Rita flashed the badge and murmured, "Ma'am, we need to talk about Emily," the words landing like punches to the solar plexus. They sat at the Formica kitchen table, the one scarred from decades of family dinners, steam rising from mugs of Lipton that no one touched, as Rita laid it out, gentle as she could. The head in the drain, the ID confirmed, the old file ripped open like a fresh wound. Tom's knuckles went white on his coffee cup, his guidance counselor calm, fracturing into a raw howl. "My girl? Jesus, not like that." While Linda rocked forward, whispering prayers in half-remembered Episcopalian snippets, her hands twisting the hem of her apron like it could wring out the horror. But beneath the shock, a toxic relief seeped in, the kind that comes from trading. What if she's out there hating us for the brutal finality of closure, even if it was wrapped in barbed wire? At least now they could grieve properly, light candles at St. Luke's, instead of staring at empty chairs at Thanksgiving. The press descended like locusts, after that vans from Pix 11 and News 12 idling curbside reporters knocking with microphones thrust forward, "Mrs. Carter. Did you suspect the fiancé? How does it feel to know she didn't run until Tom finally lost it?" Slamming the door on a kid from Patch.com and yelling through the mail slot, "Get the hell off my lawn, you vultures! This ain't entertainment." The family retreated behind drawn blinds, fielding calls from relatives in Ohio and cousins in Florida who hadn't bothered in years, their condolences laced with that Midwestern pity. "Oh, honey, we always wondered. Such a pretty girl. Why'd she throw it all away?" But Emily hadn't thrown anything. She'd been stolen piece by bloody piece, and as the story leaked into the 24-hour news cycle, crawling tickers on CNN affiliates, branding it the runaway bride's buried secret. The Carters became unwilling icons, their pain dissected on Reddit threads and Facebook groups for true crime buffs, armchair detectives spinning yarns about jilted lovers and suburban serial killers. Meanwhile, across town in the polished confines of Reynolds Imports' flagship showroom, a gleaming space off the Garden State Parkway in Paramus, all exposed brick and pendant lights casting warm pools over velvet-upholstered love seats. Michael Reynolds carried on like the gears of his life were oiled with Teflon, oblivious or impervious to the storm clouds gathering on his horizon. 6 years had sculpted him into a sharper version of the man Emily once loved, broader in the shoulders from those CrossFit sessions at the LA Fitness in Wayne, his once boyish mop of sandy hair now trimmed to an executive fade that framed his chiseled features. Just so, the faint laugh lines around his blue eyes crinkling with practiced charm as he glad-handed clients over glasses of Pinot from a Napa Valley rep. The business had ballooned under his relentless hustle, 3 showrooms now from the Jersey Shore boardwalks to the upscale enclaves of Ridgewood, plus an e-commerce arm shipping Scandinavian minimalism to doorsteps from Boston to Baltimore, raking in 7 figures that let him trade the old pickup for a sleek Audi Q5 black as midnight, with leather seats that still smelled of new money. He'd leaned into the victim narrative hard in those early months after Emily's vanishing, turning interviews into masterclasses in stoic heartbreak. The local NBC spot, where he teared up over a prototype ring he'd kept in his desk drawer. "I just wanted to build a life with her, you know." The American dream, white picket fence, and all that. Earning sympathy, floods in the comments section. Women DMing him, recipes for comfort food, and men offering golf outings to get your head straight, bro. But grief, real or rehearsed, has a shelf life in a culture that prizes forward momentum. And by year 2, Michael was back on the circuit networking mixers at the Montclair Art Museum, where he'd corner venture types with pitches on sustainable sourcing from Baltic forests. Charity runs for the Susan G. Komen Foundation pounding pavement in neon Nikes that matched his can-do vibe. Sarah Ellis entered stage right around the 3-year mark. A sharp-eyed realtor from Weikert, with a bob of honey blonde hair and a laugh that cut through boardroom din like a summer breeze. They met at a home design expo in Atlantic City, bonding over a shared disdain for particle board knockoffs, and before long, she was the one in the passenger seat of that Audi scrolling Zillow listings for a starter mansion in Millburn, with a pool for the kids they talked about in hypotheticals. To the casual observer neighbors spotting them at the Verona Park Farmers Market, him juggling artisanal cheeses while she sampled goat yogurt, they were the glossy insert in a lifestyle mag, he the wounded warrior who'd bounced back. She the balm to his scars, their Instagram feed a curated carousel of sunset sails on Barnegat Bay, and brunches at the Frog, and the peach captions like, "Grateful for new chapters, art blessed." But whispers followed him like exhaust fumes, faint at first, in the men's locker room at the gym. Heard his ex pulled a runner right before the I do's, can you imagine then, louder in the divorcee coffee clatch at Starbucks, where Sarah's friends dissected his too perfect recovery. Guys got ice in his veins. Most dudes would have crumbled. Michael shrugged it off with that disarming grin, the one that crinkled his eyes and deflected like Kevlar. Hey, life's too short for what-ifs. Emily's out there living hers, I hope. But inside the old file nagged like a loose tooth, the what-ifs twisting into contingencies he'd buried deeper than any concrete vault. The reinvestigation kicked off with the fury of a task force on Red Bull Rita Vasquez, commandeering a bullpen in the Newark precinct that smelled of stale donuts and printer toner walls papered with crime scene glossies and string-linked suspect boards that spiderwebbed from Emily's last knowns. They started with the basics, dusting off the 6-year-old file like an artifact from a bygone-era pre-TikTok virality, when missing persons didn't trend, unless they involved celebrities, and flipping it on its head, every voluntary notation, now a potential red flag screaming cover-up. Interviews ramped up fast Rita and her partner, a wiry ex-Marine named Dex Harlan, no relation to the old-timer who'd closed the original Hitting the Pavement from Montclair coffee shops to Newark dive bars, recanvassing with the weight of murder behind their questions. Emily's inner circle cracked open like walnuts under the new lens. Her college roommate Jess, now a graphic designer in Hoboken, spilling over IPAs at Barcade about Michael's possessive streak, how he'd grill Emily on every tagged photo at girls' nights. Who the hell is that dude in the Mets cap? You said it was just trivia, or insist on syncing their calendars so he could surprise her with lunch drops at the office, but really, it was about mapping her every hour. I told her it was creepy, like straight out of some Dateline episode, Jess confessed, twisting a coaster into shreds, but she laughed it off. He's just intense because he cares. God, we all thought it was passion, not poison. Then there was the barista at the Upper Montclair Starbucks, a kid named Tyler, who'd slung lattes for Emily's morning ritual, remembering how Michael would linger by the pickup counter some days, eyes tracking her as she bantered with regulars, his smile tight as a drumhead. Dude gave me the chills like he was cataloging enemies or something. Even Emily's mom Linda, in a hushed sidebar after the presser circus died down, admitted the doubts she'd swallowed back then. He pushed so hard for her to quit after the wedding, said he'd take care of us all. Beautiful house, no more 9-to-5s. But Emily, she loved her job, the independence. That last dinner she looked scared like a bird in a cage. The cyber forensics squad, a trio of millennial wizards in hoodies, who treated data like clay, dove into the digital detritus, next subpoenaing Emily's old accounts from a pre-GDPR world where privacy was more suggestion than shield. The Instagram wipe hit first her feed of sunset hikes at Watchung Reservation, and brunch hauls from the Clarelyn, all nuked on the day she vanished, not ghosted into dormancy like a true runaway, but scorched earth, deleted metadata, pinning the command to her iPhone's IP right before it went dark. This screams cleanup. One techie muttered, fingers flying over dual monitors. Not escape runners leave breadcrumbs for the find me if you can game. The cell records were the gut punch carrier logs subpoenaed from Verizon, yielding a ping trail that mocked Michael's tearful tale of her storming off into the night activity, spiking for hours after their supposed spat texts, half-drafted to Jess about needing to talk big. Then a final burst near the industrial wasteland by Newark Liberty, that no man's land of rusting silos and chain-link fences where semi-eyes idled like sleeping beasts. The tower there serviced a dead zone of forgotten factories, the kind where hobos squatted and artists spray-painted abandoned loading docks, but cross-referenced with property rolls, it lit up like a flare. One warehouse, a hulking prefab beast leased to Reynolds Imports for overflow storage, run by Michael's Uncle Ray, a grizzled vet of the import game who'd fronted the kid his first container load from Rotterdam. Bingo Rita breathed, circling the address on the map with a Sharpie that bled through the paper fiancé's family playground, 24/7 keycard access. Emily's phone dies there, and he's our star witness with the perfect alibi of heartbreak. The team pounced on surveillance next. Dex cold-calling every CCTV owner in the sprawl from scrap yards to strip malls, a Sisyphean slog of we only keep 30 days and check with corporate, until a stroke of dumb luck at Global Freight Logistics, the behemoth next door to Ray's setup, whose anal retentive IT policy archived 7 years' worth on dusty servers in Secaucus. Sign here for the warrant. The ops manager grumbled a guy named Vinny with a gold chain and a perpetual scowl, ushering them into a dim AV room that smelled of microwaved calzones. Hours blurred into a montage of grainy monochrome feeds, headlights streaking like comets, shadows of forklifts dancing under sodium arcs, until 11:17 p.m. On the night in question flickered to life, a white Ford Transit van, boxy and unremarkable, save for the Reynolds Imports decal peeling on the side panel and a telltale dent in the rear bumper from that pothole-riddled stretch of MacArthur Highway easing onto the access road like it owned the shadows. It nosed into the warehouse lot, taillights winking out, and didn't budge till 4:52 a.m., when dawn's first blush was graying the sky, the driver face obscured by a hoodie pulled low, emerging to lock up with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this dance before. "That's his rig," Dex confirmed, pausing the frame on a close-up of the plate, NJ tags matching the DMV pull on Michael's fleet registered to the man himself. Timeline fits argument at 9 van rolls in post-midnight, out before the early birds. Rita leaned back, cracking her knuckles with a pop that echoed in the quiet room, the pieces slotting like a jigsaw from hell. Possessive boyfriend deleted Trace's last ping at his backdoor van, vanishing into the witching hour. Michael Reynolds wasn't the grieving groom anymore. He was the ghost in the machine, the architect of Emily's erasure. And as the task force wrapped the night with takeout from Dino's on Ferry Street, greasy slices of eggplant parm that tasted like ash. Now the noose of justice began its inexorable tighten, pulling him from the shadows of suburbia into the harsh glare where alibis crumbled and secrets spilled like blood on concrete. For the Carters watching the late news from their living room sofa, the anchor's grave tones weaving Emily's name into national infamy. From cold feet to cold case. The bride who never made it home. It was a reckoning laced with rage. Linda clutching Tom's hand as tears carved fresh tracks down her cheeks. Whispering, "We get her back, Tom. Whatever it takes, we bury our girl whole." But Michael, pouring a nightcap of Glenfiddich in his Paramus condo overlooking the Hackensack, the city lights twinkling like distant accusations, felt the first faint tremor in his ironclad facade, a whisper of the storm he'd sown, now howling back at his door. The grainy surveillance footage, Michael Reynolds' white Ford Transit van slinking into the warehouse shadows like a thief in the night, hung over the Newark precinct's war room like a guillotine blade, and its frozen frame projected on a cracked whiteboard, where red Sharpie lines traced Emily Carter's final hours from a Montclair townhouse to the desolate industrial sprawl by Newark Liberty. Detective Rita Vasquez, chain-smoking Camels on the fire escape until her lungs burned as raw as her resolve barked orders in the bullpen's stale air, the space reeking of burnt coffee and toner from an overworked Xerox. We go dark, on Reynolds, full tail, no gaps. Dex, your days, I'm nights with the Fed loaner from Quantico. Wire his phone GPS, the Audi bug, the showroom, if the judge greenlights it. By dawn, the op was live, unmarked Tahoes ghosting Michael's silver Q5 from his Paramus condo's manicured lot to Reynolds Imports' Ifeat's flagship, where he parked under a glass porte cochere, oblivious to the techie in a nondescript van across the street, Parabolic Mike trained on his curbside chats about shifting old stock with his Uncle Ray. Michael moved like a man untouchable. His routine, a masterclass in suburban Teflon 7 a.m. spin class at Equinox in Edgewater High, fiving the trainer post-burpee sprints, sweat gleaming, but his smile fixed like a billboard. 8:30 a.m. espresso run at Dunkin' on Route 4, flirting with the barista over a turbo shot, as if the Star Ledger's front-page bride's head found was just another weather report. Then the showroom grind pitching Eames replicas to a summit couple with a charm that melted wallets. Picture this chaise by your skylight catching the Hudson's glow. No burner calls to shadowy fixers, no late-night dashes to the Pine Barrens to check buried secrets. He even posted a LinkedIn update at noon. A glossy shot of a Danish oak table captioned, "Timeless designs for timeless moments, #craft." Your legacy, oblivious to the 2K likes piling up from clients who'd never guess he was a ghost in their algorithm. Dex, nursing cold coffee in his stakeout cruiser, radioed Rita, "He's a damn robot." Sarge lunch with Sarah at that Olive Garden knockoff splitting lasagna, like it's foreplay. Then back to closing deals. If he's rattled, it's buried deeper than that drain. Rita pacing the bullpen where techs matched the van's dent to DMV specs. Muttered, "Robots crash. Give me a bigger hammer." The hammer dropped with warrants hot off a judge's desk. A grizzled ex-prosecutor who'd caught the presser and smelled blood on the Jersey wind Rita's affidavit. A mosaic of cell pings, grainy footage, and texts from Emily's cloud backup. "We need to talk. Now." "Where are you sent at 10:47 p.m. hours after Michael's She Needed Space?" Sob story. He was yanked mid-pitch at the Paramus showroom, waxing poetic about leather grain to a Morristown realtor, his face paling like milk under the track lights. As Dex and 2 uniforms flanked him, badges glinting like knives, Mr. Reynolds, time for a chat downtown. He complied with eerie calm, cuffing his Rolex like it was a prop. Telling his stunned sales team, "Close the deal, guys. I'm back by dinner," as if it were a speeding ticket, not a murder rap tightening like a noose. The interrogation room was a concrete bunker lit by a flickering overhead that buzzed like a trapped wasp, the table scarred from decades of confessions and spilled coffee, a one-way mirror fogging with Rita's breath as she watched from observation. Dex played bad cop all-marine growl, slamming a folder thick as a brick. Drop the widower act. Mikey, your van's starring in a late-night special at Uncle Ray's lot. Emily's phone flatlining right there. Spill, or we torch your little furniture kingdom. Michael sat ramrod fingers steepled like a CEO at a hostile takeover. Navy polo creased just so. Same story, detectives. She got cold feet, bolted. I loved her. Why would I hurt her? Rita slid, in velvet glove, to Dex's iron fist, perching on the table's edge with the envelope. Her voice honey over barbed wire. Love's funny Michael, the kind that tracks her Starbucks runs or deletes her Insta like she never existed, or the kind that buries heads in concrete. She slapped down the map, Essex County in lurid greens, red pin, stabbing the warehouse grid. Her last ping, your turf. Explain. His throat bobbed a crack in the mask eyes, flicking to the door like a cornered animal. But he rallied. Coincidence. Maybe an old flame, some secret I didn't know she was there, not me. Dex snorted, tossing the surveillance, still grainy but damning. The transit's dented bumper, clear as day, NJ plate screaming his name. Your ride, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Plenty of time for a cleanup. Hoodie guy. You. Silence choked the room. Michael's fingers drumming a telltale rhythm. Rita clocked from narc interrogations, his voice, tinny. Popular van guys lent it to a loader. Rico, check him. I was home drowning in scotch. Lies wobbled like Jenga, blocks his lawyer's call, cutting the session short via intercom. My client's done talking, but the cracks were there, spiderwebbing fast. Dawn brought the raid a convoy of black and whites storming his Short Hills McMansion neighbors, gawking as SWAT breached the oak door. Sarah froze mid-Keurig, poor in the kitchen screaming as cops Mirandized her to the couch. The garage was the prize, a 3-bay shrine to Michael's hobbies. Tools hung surgical on pegboard's floor, spotless as a surgical theater. Initial sweeps found nothing. No blood under UV, no barrels of quicklime, but Gus, the forensics vet, with eyes like a hawk, froze by the back wall. Maglite tracing a cinder block seam behind a craftsman rack. Mortars too fresh, he grunted, grouts bright, no grime repointed recent. Techs swung sledgehammers, dust clouding as blocks gave way to a hollow 12 inches deep, exhaling mildew and madness. Forensics suits lit the void, pulling artifacts, stilettos, bloodied souls, whispering Emily's DNA. The engagement ring, its engraving a ghost of promises. The photo, her smile scarred by his scrawl. "We're fused forever," handwriting matched to his import manifests. Rita radioed the tale, "Bring him in hot," as the noose tightened. Michael's empire crumbling under the weight of his own sick shrine. Sarah sobbing on the staircase as the man she loved morphed into a monster. The Carters watching chopper feeds on mute. Linda clutching rosary beads, whispering, "Come home, baby. Just come home." The garage raid's dust still hung in the air, cinderblock grit, crunching under SWAT boots like bones of a buried past, when Rita Vasquez's team hauled Michael Reynolds back into the Newark precinct's interrogation box, the room a concrete crypt, where the air crackled with the metallic tang of bagged evidence and the stale reek of mildew baked into the walls. Cuffed in the paddy wagon's cage, the ride from Short Hills had been a blur of neon-lit Newark underpasses, Michael's mind spinning contingencies like a cornered fox, deny the handwriting as a frame job, claim the shoes were a forgotten gift, spin the photo as a mourner's keepsake from therapy sessions never held. But as Dex slammed him into the chair, plastic ties biting his wrists, the table's steel edge bruising his gut. Rita strode in like a gunslinger manila envelope, a loaded weapon, her eyes pinning him with a predator's glare honed on iron-bound perps. "Game's up." "Michael," she said, voice flat, as Jersey asphalt dumping the artifacts in a slow fan, stilettos, blood-flecked and scuffed heels accusatory. "The diamond ring, its forever starts." Here, engraving a cruel taunt. The photo, Emily's cafe smile, defiled by his scrawl. She wasn't ready. Neither was I. "We're fused forever," his own hand damning him in blue ink. Michael's facade, that polished mogul sheen of CrossFit swagger and showroom charm, crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide, his face, ashen eyes glazing over the relics like a man staring at his own grave. No screams, just a deflating hiss, his whisper brittle. "How'd you find it? That wall was perfect." Rita leaned in, breath steady, menthol gum cutting the staleness. "Doesn't matter. Why'd you turn love into a slaughterhouse display?" "Talk. Emily's waiting." Dex loomed, but Rita's scalpel carved deep, teasing out the rage. "She wanted to delay." "Huh?" "Cracked your dream of domestic empire." Until Michael's voice spilled monotone. A machine reciting doom that night in Montclair. Take out Ty cooling Emily in her Rutgers hoodie, mumbling about needing time, her fear of forever snapping his vision of their Verona House kids' picket fence. She laughed, nervous, like I was a joke. He said, gaze locked on the photo. Something broke, grabbed her arm. She tripped, hit the workbench. Crack. Temple split, blood on the oak. No panic, just relief. Glitch fixed. He described the cold pragmatism tarp from the rafters hacksaw, whining through bonehead taped in their anniversary sheet, buried in the I-80 drain with a rented backhoe. The rest, scattered pine barrens, Delaware currents. Nature's cleanup. The garage wall, his memory place, held shoes ring photo, not trophies, but a twisted bond. Rita pressed, "Where's the rest?" Give her family peace. But he sealed shut, a narcissist's final checkmate. The confession, taped and transcribed, launched the case to trial in Newark's Superior Court. A circus of podcasters and gawkers, the Carters, in Black Linda's rosary, clicking. Defense spun insanity, but the jury Jersey workers from Linden to East Orange saw through Van footage Wall's secrets, his own words, a noose. 2 hours, verdict unanimous murder, corpse abuse desecration. D.A. Kowalski pushed lethal injection. The judge Stern sentenced death. You defiled her echo, Mr. Reynolds. Michael in orange nodded to Sarah, her face a mask of betrayal as deputies led him to East Jersey State Prison. The Carters buried Emily's head at St. Luke's Peonies, wilting on a half-casket, Tom's eulogy raw. Her light burns free. Searches in the Pinelands and Bay failed. Michael's silence held her remains hostage. A case closed partial. The Star-Ledger ran Bride's Missing Pieces, I-80. Paving over the truth. The Carters fled to Florida, haunted by what-if's bones in the barrens, a femur in the bay. While Michael's empire crumbled, Sarah fled to therapy, and Rita's plaque soured beside the Carters' card. Half our girl back. Emily's marker in Mount Hebron read, "Forever free," but the wind whispered unanswered whys, a suburban scar eternal as the highway's hum.